The storm came down from the north like a living thing, thick and unforgiving. Garrett Vance drove his Ford F-150 through the narrow mountain road, the wipers beating a steady rhythm across the windshield. The truck was old, 15 years past its prime, with rust creeping along the wheel wells and a passenger mirror held on with duct tape. But it ran. That was all that mattered. The road bent through pines heavy with snow, their branches sagging under the weight of winter. Montana in February was honest in its cruelty. No pretense, no mercy, just cold that cut through fabric and wind that pushed against metal like it had a grudge. Garrett kept both hands on the wheel. His field jacket, olive green and worn soft at the elbows, hung open over a red and black flannel shirt. Cargo pants, boots with salt stains creeping up the leather. The kind of clothes a man wore when he stopped caring about impressions and started caring about survival. He was 32 years old. He looked older. In the passenger seat, Kodiak sat perfectly still. The German shepherd's posture was military even at rest. Black and tan fur, amber eyes locked on the road ahead, ears tilted forward like radar dishes pulling signals from the storm. 7 years old, retired K-9, bomb detection, Afghanistan. Same unit as Garrett. They had both left pieces of themselves in that desert. The radio crackled, static, then a voice breaking through. Missing hiker reported near Ironwood Lake area. Search suspended due to weather conditions. The signal died. Garrett reached for the dial, then stopped. No point. The storm was eating everything. Kodiak shifted, just slightly, a tightening of muscle beneath fur. His head lowered, ears rigid. Then he did it. 3 taps. Paw against the metal floor. Deliberate, measured. Boom, boom, boom. Garrett's hands tightened on the wheel. That sound meant one thing. Always had. In Kandahar and training in the moments before the world exploded. Danger. Easy, buddy, Garrett said, voice low. We're just passing through. But Kodiak didn't ease. His body went taut, every muscle coiled. He whined once sharp and urgent, then pawed at the door handle. Garrett slowed the truck. The road disappeared into white ahead of them, snow falling so thick the headlights barely cut 10 feet. He rolled down the window an inch. Cold air knifed in, carrying the hiss of sleet against metal and the groan of wind through timber. Then he heard it, faint, almost swallowed by the storm. But there, a voice, help! Weak, fractured, human. Please, someone. Garrett cut the engine. The sudden silence was jarring. Just wind now, and that voice drifting through the trees like smoke. Kodiak was already moving. He launched from the seat, landing in snow with practiced grace. Garrett grabbed his maglite from the glove box, zipped his jacket to his throat, and followed. The beam cut through falling snow, revealing a forest of shadows and white. Kodiak trotted ahead, nose low to the ground, tail straight and alert. His breath came out in clouds. Track, Garrett whispered. The dog responded instantly. He veered left, pushing through brush heavy with ice. Branches slapped against Garrett's shoulders, but he didn't slow. Behind him, the truck disappeared into the storm. The voice came again, clearer now. Closer. Down here. God, I thought I was done for. Kodiak stopped at the edge of a slope. His bark was sharp. Single. A signal Garrett knew better than his own heartbeat. Found him. Garrett approached carefully, boots slipping on frozen ground. The flashlight beam bounced off something too smooth to be natural. A pit. Collapsed. Snow gathered around the rim like jagged teeth. Down here. The voice rose from the hole, old trembling. I fell through, checking my traps. Garrett dropped to his stomach, aimed the light down. An elderly man lay wedged between broken roots and packed earth. His right leg twisted awkwardly beneath him, bent at an angle that made Garrett's teeth clench. The man's face was pale, deeply lined, weathered by decades of Montana winters. Silver hair plastered to his skull by sleet. His jacket, a brown Carhartt older than some trees, was soaked through. But what caught Garrett's attention was the man's hand, clenched tight around something. Even in pain, even half frozen, he wouldn't let go. Hang on, Garrett called down. We're getting you out. He scanned the rim, unstable, crumbling dirt mixed with ice. A straight pull would bring the whole thing down on both of them. He needed leverage, needed control. Muscle memory took over. Garrett pulled the paracord from his pack. 50 feet of Type 3 rated for 550 pounds. He looped it around a fallen pine trunk, thick as a man's torso, tested the tension with his full weight. Solid. What's your name? Garrett asked, feeding the rope down. Boone, the old man gasped. Boone Aldridge. All right, Boone, I'm Garrett. My dog's Kodiak. We're going to get you topside, but I need you to stay conscious. Talk to me. What are you holding? Boone's eyes flickered to his clenched fist. For a moment, something passed across his face. Not pain, fear. Can't, can't let go. That's fine, keep holding it. Just let me get this rope around you. Garrett descended carefully, boots finding purchase on exposed roots. Kodiak remained above a dark silhouette against falling snow, watching with the intensity of a guardian angel carved from stone. Up close, Boone looked worse, hypothermia setting in, lips going blue, tremors running through his body in waves. Garrett slipped the rope under the old man's arms, secured it with a bowline knot he could tie blind. His hands worked with the efficiency of 1,000 repetitions. Navy SEAL training, explosive ordnance disposal. When you defused bombs for a living, knots became prayer. This is going to hurt, Garrett said. Everything hurts, Boone whispered. But I'm not dying out here, not tonight. Garrett gave 2 sharp tugs on the rope. Kodiak's signal. The dog braced his paws against the frozen ground, using his body weight as a counterbalance. 75 pounds of trained muscle. Garrett pushed from below, guiding Boone upward inch by inch. The old man bit back screams, but they leaked out anyway, torn from his throat by pain that had no mercy. His leg dragged uselessly, but his right hand never opened. Finally, blessedly, Boone's shoulders cleared the rim. Kodiak shifted position, maintaining tension. Garrett pulled himself up, grabbed the old man under the armpits, and hauled him onto flat ground. Boone collapsed into the snow, gasping. His teeth chattered so violently he couldn't speak for a moment. Garrett knelt beside him, checking pupils. Responsive. Good. Pulse weak but steady. Hypothermic but not critical yet. The leg was bad, probably fractured tibia. Maybe worse. You saved me, Boone finally managed. His voice barely rose above the wind. Didn't think anyone would be out here. Wasn't planning on it, Garrett replied. He wrapped his own jacket around Boone's shoulders. The cold hit Garrett immediately, but he ignored it. Kodiak heard you first. Boone's gaze drifted to the dog. Kodiak stepped closer, lowering his head to sniff the old man's face. A gentle gesture. Assessing, confirming life. Good boy, Boone whispered. Smart boy. Garrett looked around. The storm was tightening into a wall of white. Visibility down to maybe 20 feet. Temperature dropping fast. The peace he'd felt driving through the mountains was gone, replaced by the sharp edge of responsibility. The urgency of a life depending on him. He'd felt this before. Too many times. We need to get you warm, Garrett said. Hospital's 40 miles. In this storm, we won't make it. Boone's hand finally opened. In his palm lay a key, brass tarnished with age, heavy and old-fashioned. The kind that opened doors built before anyone cared about security codes or electronic locks. Engraved on the bow, barely visible, 17 Iron Bell Tavern. Boone said each word in effort. 3 miles. East, on the lake. Get me there, please. Don't let them take it. Take what? But Boone's eyes rolled back, consciousness slipping. Garrett caught him before his head hit frozen ground. Stay with me, Boone. No response. Garrett hoisted the old man, carefully positioned him in a fireman's carry modified by years of battlefield extraction. Boone weighed maybe 160. Light. Fragile. Like carrying something already halfway to breaking. Kodiak trotted ahead, clearing a path through the brush. The dog moved with purpose, glancing back every 10 seconds to confirm Garrett was following. The truck appeared through the snow like a ghost ship emerging from fog. Garrett laid Boone across the back seat, wrapped him in emergency blankets from the kit behind the driver's seat. Mylar crinkled. Kodiak jumped in beside the old man, positioned himself as a living heater. Garrett slid behind the wheel. His flannel shirt was soaked with melted snow and sweat. He ignored it. 3 miles east. Iron Bell Tavern. He turned the key. The engine coughed, rumbled to life. The road bent through trees so thick they formed a tunnel. Garrett drove slowly, the F-150 rattling over potholes hidden beneath fresh powder. In the rearview mirror, he could see Kodiak pressed against Boone, amber eyes watching the old man's chest rise and fall. Then the trees opened up. Ironwood Lake spread before them, vast and dark. The surface was frozen solid, covered in a thin layer of fresh snow that made it look like hammered silver. In the growing dusk, it seemed less like water and more like a void, something that swallowed light and gave nothing back. And there, perched at the lake's edge like a relic from another era, stood the tavern. Iron Bell Tavern. 2 stories of weathered wood, dark from decades of moisture and smoke. A porch sagged slightly on the north side, held up by posts that had settled into the earth at odd angles. The roof was steep, designed to shed snow, missing a few shingles where storms had claimed their tribute. A sign hung above the door, crooked and faded. Hand-painted letters barely visible. Iron Bell Tavern. Estin, 1947. The place looked abandoned, windows dark, no smoke from the chimney, but someone had shoveled the steps recently. Boot prints still visible under the new snow. Garrett pulled as close to the porch as the terrain allowed. He lifted Boone again, felt the old man's breath against his neck. Shallow. Too shallow. Kodiak jumped out first, landing silently. But this time he didn't move forward. The dog froze at the bottom of the steps. His ears went rigid. Fur along his spine rose in a line from shoulders to tail. Then he did it again. Boom, boom, boom. 3 taps, right paw against weathered wood. Garrett stopped. What is it? Kodiak's eyes were locked on the tavern door, his body tense, every muscle coiled. But he wasn't growling, wasn't showing teeth. This wasn't aggression. This was warning. Something about this place was wrong, but Boone's breathing was getting weaker. Garrett had no choice. Guard, he told Kodiak. The dog would follow, but on alert. Ready. Garrett climbed the steps. Each board groaned under his weight, the sound echoing across the empty lake like something alive. When he reached the door, he nudged it open with his shoulder. The hinges moaned, a long, tired sound that spoke of years without oil. Inside, the air was cold, but still. No wind. The smell hit immediately. Old wood, fire smoke trapped in timber. Years of loneliness soaked into every surface. Garrett's eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through grimy windows. The main room was larger than it looked from outside. A bar ran along the left wall, dark oak worn smooth by decades of elbows and glasses. Bottles lined shelves behind it, covered in dust so thick they looked like they'd been dipped in gray paint. Tables scattered across the floor, chairs tucked in neatly, as if waiting for customers who would never come. But it wasn't the furniture that made Garrett's spine tighten. It was the sound, low, subtle, metallic. A vibration coming from somewhere beneath the floorboards, like a machine running deep underground, or a heartbeat too slow to be human. Kodiak entered the room and the sound seemed to respond. The vibration increased, just slightly, just enough to be felt through boot soles. The dog lowered his head, sniffing the floor. His nose traced a pattern across the boards, back and forth, methodical. Then he stopped at a section near the bar. He tapped his paw. Once, twice, a third time. Slow, deliberate, and from below something answered. 3 taps in return. Boom, 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 coming from under the floor. Deep down, where nothing should be. A chill crawled up Garrett's neck. Kodiak didn't bark, didn't growl. He simply stared at the floorboards with those amber eyes as if saying, "This place is not what it seems." "Easy, buddy," Garrett whispered, though his own pulse was hammering now. He carried Boone to a chair near the old wood stove in the corner. Someone had left kindling and split logs in a cast-iron rack. Garrett worked quickly, building a fire from memory. Newspaper, small sticks, larger pieces. A match struck, held to tinder. Flames caught, spread, pushed back the cold. Boone stirred as warmth began to fill the room. His eyelids fluttered. "Where?" His voice was barely audible. "Iron Bell Tavern," Garrett said. "Like you asked. You're safe." Boone's eyes focused. Panic flashed across his face. No, not safe. Never safe here. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" But the old man's gaze had shifted to the floor, to the section where Kodiak had tapped, where the vibration still hummed low and persistent. "Some things," Boone whispered, "should stay buried." Garrett knelt in front of him. "Boone, you're hurt. You're hypothermic. Tell me what you need. Medical supplies I can—" "Not tonight." Boone's hand shot out, gripped Garrett's wrist with surprising strength. "Don't open anything tonight. Don't go down there. Please. It's already awake because of the storm." "Down where? What's down there?" Boone's eyes drifted closed. "Secrets. Ones my father kept. Ones he made me swear to protect. This place, it wasn't built for drinks and stories. It was built for—" His voice faded. Garrett tightened the blanket around Boone's shoulders. "Built for what?" "More," Boone breathed. "So much more." The fire crackled. Shadows danced across the walls, making the photographs hanging there seem to move. Garrett stood scanning the room while Kodiak positioned himself between Boone and the door. Guard mode, protecting the injured. Garrett walked to the wall of photographs. Fishermen holding giant trout. A family smiling in front of a dock. Men standing in front of the tavern, the building behind them looking fresh and new. Most photos were faded colors bleached by time, faces becoming ghostly. One frame held a black and white picture that stopped Garrett cold. 12 men, standing in a half circle. Behind them, a massive bronze bell hung from a wooden frame. Each man wore the same expression, serious, solemn, like soldiers before deployment. The photo was dated on the back. Garrett could just make out the pencil marks, January 15th, 1947. Below that, handwritten in neat script, Ironwood Emergency Society. Founding members, and their third from the left was a younger version of Boone Aldridge, maybe 20 years old, thin, unsmiling, standing next to a man who could only be his father. Same jaw, same eyes. Garrett studied the bell in the photograph. It was enormous, 4 feet tall at least, bronze. Ornate patterns carved into the metal. He could just make out letters along the rim. Before he could read them, a sound cut through the tavern. A creak, sharp, loud, coming from the far corner of the room. Kodiak shot to his feet, teeth bared. A growl vibrated deep in his chest, low enough to feel in the floorboards. Garrett turned slowly. The floor in the corner had shifted, just barely. A board sitting slightly higher than the others, like something beneath had pushed up. The vibration beneath the tavern grew stronger, that metallic hum rising in pitch, the sound of old machinery waking after a long sleep. Or something else. Something worse. Garrett walked toward the corner, maglite in hand. Kodiak matched him step for step, body tense. Garrett knelt, pressed his hand against the warped board. It was warm. Warm when everything else in the tavern was cold. "Boone," Garrett called without turning. "Is there something mechanical under here? A heater generator?" The old man's voice came back weak, frightened. No generator, no heater, just the past. Garrett didn't understand, but he understood the tone. He'd heard it before. In villages outside Kandahar, when locals warned him not to dig in certain places. When they spoke of things buried that wanted to stay buried. The wind howled outside, rattling windows. The lake groaned a deep, resonant sound that seemed far too alive to be ice-shifting. For a moment, Garrett felt an old sensation creep up his spine. The one he used to feel right before all hell broke loose during missions. An instinct he had learned never to ignore. Kodiak moved to his side, nudging his leg. Eyes steady, unblinking. Something was here. Something old. Something hidden. Garrett stood. "Listen," he said, moving back to Boone. "You're safe for now. I'll get you to a doctor in the morning. Soon as the road's clear." Boone shook his head weakly. "No hospital, no police. They'll ask questions. Questions lead to attention. Tension leads to..." He trailed off, breath hitching. "Leads to what? Him. Who?" But Boone's eyes were closing again. Exhaustion pulling him under. Garrett checked his pulse. Weak but steady. The fire had brought color back to the old man's face. He'd make it through the night. Garrett settled into a chair near the stove. Kodiak curled at his feet, though his eyes never left the dark corners of the tavern. Always watching. Always ready. Outside, the storm pressed against the walls like a living thing. Snow piled against windows. Wind found every crack, every gap, whistling through like voices, whispering warnings. And somewhere under the tavern floor, something knocked. Once. Twice. A third time. Slow. Heavy. As if answering Kodiak's signal from hours before. Garrett looked down at his dog. Kodiak didn't growl. Didn't bark. He simply stared back with those steady amber eyes. "This place is not what it seems," those eyes said. Garrett reached down, ran his hand along the dog's back. "I know, buddy. I know." The night stretched ahead. Long, cold, full of questions Garrett wasn't sure he wanted answered. But one thing was certain. By morning, the storm would pass, and the real storm would begin. Garrett sat near the dying fire, watching embers pulse like slow heartbeats. The tavern had settled into an uneasy silence. No more vibrations, no more knocking. Just the creak of old wood adjusting to temperature changes and the whisper of wind through gaps in the walls. Boone slept fitfully, mumbling occasionally. Words Garrett couldn't quite catch. Names, maybe, or warnings. Kodiak hadn't relaxed once. The dog lay with his head up, ears rotating like radar dishes, tracking every sound the building made. His breathing was controlled, measured. The breathing of a soldier on watch. Garrett knew he should sleep. His body ached from the cold, from hauling Boone through the storm, from the tension that had been his constant companion since leaving the Navy. But sleep felt dangerous here, like closing your eyes in enemy territory. So he stayed awake, studying the tavern in the firelight. The bar was built from a single piece of oak, massive and ancient. No joints, no seams. Just one tree cut and planed and oiled until it gleamed. Behind it, shelves held bottles from decades past. Labels faded, liquid evaporated, ghosts of drinks never finished. A ledger lay open on the bar, leather-bound, pages yellowed. Garrett stood, walked over, ran his fingers across the entries. Dates from the late 1940s. Names, notations about storms, missing fishermen, and something else. References to something called Relay Point at 17. Garrett's eyes narrowed. The key Boone had been clutching. The number 17 engraved on brass. He flipped pages carefully. More entries, more references. February 3rd, 1947. Ice break on North Shore. Bell sequence 1738. Rescue successful. 4 souls saved. February 18th, 1947. Whiteout conditions. Bell sequence 1712. Search and recovery. 2 souls lost. March 2nd, 1947. Relay point 17 damaged in storm. Repairs needed before spring thaw. Garrett stopped. Read that last entry again. Relay point 17. A relay system. For what rescue operations? He turned to ask Boone, but the old man was deep in whatever dreams haunted men who kept secrets for 70 years. Movement caught Garrett's eye. Outside, through the grimy window, a figure stood at the end of the dock. Tall, dark coat, posture too still to be casual. The falling snow swirled around them, but they didn't move, didn't shift weight, just stood there. Watching the tavern, Garrett's hand went instinctively to his hip. No weapon. He'd left that life behind. But the instinct remained. He moved to the door, careful not to make noise on the old floorboards. Kodiak was already on his feet, silent and ready. Garrett pulled the door open an inch. Cold air rushed in, sharp and clean. "Anyone out there?" he called. His voice carried across the frozen lake. The figure turned, slowly, deliberately. For a moment, Garrett saw a face. Too far to make out features, but close enough to confirm it was real. A person, not a trick of snow and shadow. Then the figure stepped backward. 1 step, 2, and disappeared into the storm like smoke. Garrett pushed the door wider, stepped onto the porch. "Hey, you need help." Only the wind answered. The dock stood empty. No footprints in the fresh snow. No sign anyone had been there at all. But Garrett knew what he'd seen. Kodiak growled, deep, territorial. The kind of sound he made when threat assessment exceeded normal parameters. Garrett scanned the tree line, the lake, the road. Nothing. But he felt eyes, watching, waiting. He retreated inside, locked the door. Not that a lock would stop anyone determined, but it made a statement. This space was claimed, protected. A sharp cough brought his attention back to the fire. Boone was awake, eyes open but unfocused. His breathing had improved, but pain lined his face like carved stone. "There's someone out there," Boone said, not a question, a statement. Garrett replied. "They left." "No." Boone's hand trembled as he pointed toward the window. "They never leave, they just wait." "Who?" But Boone turned his head away. "Fog likes to play tricks, makes you see things that aren't there, or things that are." Garrett pulled a chair close. "Boone, level with me. What's going on here? Who was that? What's under this floor? Why did you tell me not to let them take the tavern?" The old man was quiet for a long time. Outside, the storm began to ease. The wind dropped from a howl to a moan. Snow fell lighter, softer. Finally, Boone spoke. "My father built this place," he said, each word careful, measured. "But he didn't build it alone, and he didn't build it to sell beer to fishermen." He paused, gathering strength. "In the winter of 1947, this lake killed 29 people in 1 month. Ice breaks, storms, boats that went out and never came back. The nearest hospital was 60 miles. No helicopters. Radio signals died in these mountains. People died waiting for help that couldn't reach them." Garrett listened. Kodiak had moved closer, lying at Boone's feet like a guardian. "So my father and 11 other men built something. A network. Bells placed at strategic points around the lake. When someone was in trouble, they rang the bell. The sound carried across ice, through fog. The volunteers would triangulate the source, mount a rescue." Boone's eyes grew distant, remembering. "They saved hundreds of lives over 5 years, pulled drowning children from broken ice, found lost hunters in blizzards, retrieved bodies when rescues came too late so families could bury their dead with dignity." "What happened?" Garrett asked. "Someone noticed." Boone's voice hardened. "Someone powerful. Someone who didn't like the idea of ordinary people organizing without permission, without oversight, without paying tribute." "Who?" Boone's hand clenched. "A man named Elias Mercer. He owned the timber company that controlled half this county. My father and his volunteers had pulled 3 of Mercer's workers from the lake in January 1947. Saved their lives. Mercer never said thank you. He said, What's your price? Understanding dawned on Garrett's face. My father said there was no price. Help was free. That's what communities do. They help each other. Boone coughed, continued. Mercer couldn't understand that. To him, everything had a price. Everything was leverage. So he started spreading rumors. Said the Bell system was actually a network for smuggling liquor left over from Prohibition. Said my father and the others were criminals using rescue work as a cover. Were they? No. The word was steal. Never, but Mercer had money, had lawyers, had friends in the government. By 1952, the accusations had destroyed the network. Men lost their jobs, their reputations. Some lost their families. Boone's voice dropped to a whisper. My father hid the proof, the real records, the charter that established this land as community property. The Bell itself, all of it. He swore us to secrecy, said one day someone would come asking the right questions. Someone who would finish what he started. The old man's eyes locked onto Garrett's. I think that someone is you. Silence filled the tavern, heavy, expectant. Garrett stood, walked to the window. The storm had passed. Stars were visible now between breaking clouds. The lake stretched out like polished obsidian, reflecting nothing. I'm nobody, Garrett said quietly. Just a guy who pulled you out of a hole. You're a Navy SEAL. Garrett turned. How did you, your dog, your knots, the way you moved. I was a soldier once. Did time in places where medals don't get handed out. I know how warriors move. Boone shifted in his chair, wincing. Tomorrow someone will come, someone from the Mercer family. They've been trying to claim this land for 77 years, waiting for me to die, waiting for the last person who knows the truth to disappear. He reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. His hands shook as he held it out. This is my will, handwritten, signed. Witnessed by Iris, my wife, last month when I knew my heart was giving out. Garrett took the paper, unfolded it. Read by firelight. I, Boone Aldridge, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath all property, land, and possessions to the person who saves my life when death comes calling. This tavern and the secrets beneath it belong to whoever has the courage to pull me from the dark. Signed, dated, witnessed. I can't accept this, Garrett said. You already did. The moment you threw that rope down. I don't know anything about running a tavern. You don't need to run it. You need to protect it and what's beneath it. Garrett looked at the floorboards, at the spot where warmth still radiated, where something had knocked in response to Kodiak's warning. What exactly is down there, Boone? The old man smiled, sad, tired. The truth, and in the morning you'll have to decide if truth is worth fighting for. Before Garrett could respond, his phone buzzed. Signal must have returned when the storm cleared. He pulled it from his pocket. One text message. Unknown number. Leave the old man. Drive away before dawn. Last chance. Garrett showed it to Boone. The color drained from the old man's face. They know you're here, he whispered. They're always watching. Kodiak moved to the window. A low growl built in his chest. Outside, at the end of the dock, a shadow stood where no shadow should be. Then it moved, stepped backward into darkness, vanished. But this time Garrett saw footprints, fresh ones, leading from the dock toward the road, then disappearing into tree line. Someone had been there, was perhaps still there, watching, waiting. Garrett looked at the will in his hand, at Boone, who had trusted him with something bigger than a building, at Kodiak, who stood ready to defend whatever needed defending. He thought of Lieutenant Jenkins, the man who had died in that tunnel in Kandahar, because Garrett hadn't been fast enough, hadn't been good enough, the face that haunted every nightmare. You can't save everyone, the Navy psychiatrist had said, but maybe you could save someone. Maybe that was enough. Garrett folded the will, put it in his pocket. I'll stay, he said quietly, until you're back on your feet, until we figure this out. Boone's eyes glistened. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither did my father, neither did any of us. We just knew some things were worth standing up for. Garrett nodded. He added more wood to the fire, checked Boone's leg, made sure the old man was as comfortable as possible. Then he settled into the chair, Kodiak at his feet, and watched the night. Outside, the lake groaned, ice shifting, or something beneath it waking. And in Garrett's pocket, the phone buzzed again. Another message. Same unknown number. Wrong choice. Garrett deleted it, turned off the phone. Whatever was coming could wait for daylight. For now he had a fire to tend, an old man to protect, and a dog who would die before letting anything past him. It wasn't much, but for the first time in 3 years it felt like enough. Morning came cold and bright. The storm had scrubbed the sky clean, leaving behind a blue so deep it hurt to look at. Sunlight hit the frozen lake and shattered into 1,000 diamonds. Beautiful. Merciless. Garrett hadn't opened the door when Thornton Mercer knocked. Instead, he'd waited. Let the man stand on the porch in the cold for a full minute before responding. A small act of defiance, but it established something. This was Garrett's ground now, his rules. When he finally opened the door, Mercer's smile hadn't wavered. "Good morning," the man said. His voice was smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that belonged in boardrooms and courtrooms. "You must be the Good Samaritan who found Mr. Aldridge." Garrett didn't answer, just stood in the doorway blocking entry. Behind him, Kodiak positioned himself between the door and Boone. Protective stance. Ready. "I'm Thornton Mercer." He extended his hand. Manicured nails, gold watch catching sunlight. "I own Mercer Land Development. We've been in negotiations with Mr. Aldridge about this property." Garrett didn't take the hand. Mercer lowered it smoothly. "No offense taken, or none shown anyway." "Is Boone all right? We heard about the storm. Got worried when he didn't answer his phone." "He's alive," Garrett said. "Banged up, needs rest." Of course, I should call an ambulance." "Already taken care of." That wasn't true, but Mercer didn't need to know that. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, reassessing. "And you are the guy who pulled him out of a hole." "I see. Well, I'm very grateful. Boone's a dear friend of the family. We'd hate to lose him." The way he said it made Garrett's jaw tighten, like Boone was already lost, already counted among the dead. "He'll be fine," Garrett said. "I'm sure." Mercer glanced past Garrett into the tavern. "Interesting old place, isn't it? Been in the Aldridge family since 1947, but time catches up to all of us. Buildings, people, traditions." He looked back at Garrett. "Things that outlive their usefulness need to make way for the future. I'm sure you understand." "I understand plenty." Mercer smiled wider. "I'm sure you do. Well, I won't take up more of your time. Please tell Boone I stopped by. Tell him we'll need to finalize our arrangements soon. The paperwork's been sitting too long." He turned to leave, then paused. "I didn't catch your name." Garrett said nothing. Mercer studied him for a long moment, then nodded like something had been confirmed. "Well, welcome to Ironwood, stranger. It's a small community. We all get to know each other eventually." He walked back to his Escalade, unhurried, confident, like a man who had never lost anything he truly wanted. The engine started. The vehicle backed away, disappeared into the trees. Garrett closed the door. His hands were shaking slightly. Not fear, anger. "That's him," Boone said from his chair. "That's the man I told you about. He seems to think he owns this place already. In his mind, he does. In his family's mind, they've owned it since 1947. My father just didn't know it yet." Garrett walked to the window, watched the road where dust from Mercer's tires still hung in the air. "We need proof," he said, "real proof, not just your word against his lawyers." Boone nodded weakly. "It's out there, the charter, the records, everything my father hid. Where, under the floor, Kodiak will show you." As if on cue, the dog moved to the corner of the tavern, the same spot where he'd alerted last night. He began digging at the floorboards with his front paws. Methodical, purposeful. Garrett knelt beside him. "What did you find, buddy?" Kodiak scraped harder. Wood splintered. A board came loose, beneath it a hollow space. Old, dusty, but not empty. Garrett reached in carefully. His fingers touched wood. He pulled. A small wooden box emerged. Simple construction. No lock. Just age and secrecy keeping it sealed. He opened it. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a USB drive. Modern, silver. Completely at odds with everything else in this place. Garrett held it up to the light. "This is recent." "Last year," Boone said. "Iris bought it for me. Taught me how to use the computer. I transferred everything from the old cassette tapes, the ones Thomas saved before he died. Thomas, my brother, died in a house fire in 1983. They said it was electrical. I know better." Boone's voice dropped. He was trying to save the recordings. Evidence. Proof of what they'd done. The fire was supposed to destroy everything. Thomas. The tapes, the truth. He looked at Garrett. But my brother was smarter than they gave him credit for. He got the tapes out before the smoke took him. Hid them in our mother's root cellar. I found them 3 days after his funeral. Garrett turned the USB over in his hands. "What's on here?" "The confession, or close to it. A conversation between my father and William Mercer, Thornton's father, recorded in 1983, 2 months before Thomas died." "How'd your brother record it?" "Hidden microphone. Thomas was a radio technician, knew how to wire things. When Mercer came to threaten us, Thomas was ready. Garrett found Boone's old laptop behind the bar. Windows 7, slow as molasses, but it worked. He plugged in the drive, one folder, one audio file inside, dated March 15th, 1983. Garrett clicked play. Static hissed through the speakers, then voices, muffled at first, then clear. A younger Boone, angry, defiant. I told you already. This tavern isn't for sale. Not to you, not to anyone. Another voice, older, harder. Your father made promises, Boone. Debts were incurred. Those debts transfer to you. My father never owed your family anything. You're lying. A pause, then the older voice again, colder now. You want to end up like your brother Thomas learned the hard way what happens to people who don't cooperate. Thomas died in a house fire. The report said electrical. Reports say what we pay them to say. Now sign the papers, Boone, or find out if lightning strikes twice. The recording cut to static. Garrett sat back. That's a direct threat. That's William Mercer, Thornton's father. He died in 1995. Heart attack. But before he died, he made sure his son understood the family business, which is taking what isn't theirs and making it legal. Garrett ejected the drive, pocketed it. This isn't enough, not for court. It's old. No proof of who's talking. Any lawyer would shred it. I know, Boone said. That's why you need what's under the lake. The charter. The charter, the original bell, the records from 1947. All of it. My father sealed it in a chamber 17 feet below the ice. Relay point 17. The last bell in the network. The one that mattered most. Garrett looked out at the frozen lake. 17 feet. In water cold enough to stop your heart in minutes. I'll need gear. There's a dry suit in the storage room upstairs. Belonged to Thomas. He was about your size. Tanks are old, but they hold pressure. I checked them last summer. Why? Boone smiled sadly. Because I knew this day would come. One way or another. Garrett started to respond, but Kodiak cut him off with a sharp bark. The dog was at the door again, ears rigid. Another vehicle. This time a sheriff's cruiser. Relief washed through Garrett, finally. Official help. The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. Tall, maybe 5'9", red hair pulled back in a tight bun, green eyes sharp enough to cut glass. She wore the tan uniform of the county sheriff's department, but something about the way she carried herself said military, or something close to it. She walked to the porch with purpose, knocked twice, firm, professional. Garrett opened the door. Morning, she said. Sheriff Cassidy Brennan. Got a report about a rescue last night, wanted to check on the situation. Her eyes scanned past Garrett, taking in Boone the fire Kodiak. Assessing, calculating. Boone Aldridge, she said, focusing on the old man. You look like hell. Feel worse, Cassidy. I bet. She looked at Garrett. And you are Garrett Vance. Recognition flickered across her face. Just for a second. Then it was gone. Navy, she asked. Was. SEAL, Garrett nodded once. Thought so. You move like it. She glanced at Kodiak. Military working dog. Retired K9, EOD. Good breed for it. She turned her attention back to Boone. You need a hospital. I need to stay here. Boone, I'm not leaving this tavern, Cassidy. Not now. Not when Mercer's circling. Her jaw tightened. He's already been here. 20 minutes ago, Garrett said. Damn it. She pulled out a small notepad. What did he say? The usual threats wrapped in politeness. Mentioned paperwork. Made it clear he expects to own this place soon. Cassidy wrote quickly. Boone, I need you to listen to me. Thornton Mercer isn't like his father. He doesn't burn houses. He uses lawyers. Legal pressure. He'll bury you in paperwork until you can't afford to fight. I know. So sell. Take his money. Move to Billings. Live out your years in peace. Can't do that. Why not? Boone looked at Garrett, a long-waited look. Because my father made me promise. And because some things are worth more than peace. Cassidy closed her notepad, sighed. You're going to make me work, aren't you? Someone should. She almost smiled. Almost. All right, fine. What do you need at time, Boone said, and for Garrett to find what's under the lake. Cassidy's eyes snapped to Garrett. Excuse me? There's a chamber, Garrett explained, 17 feet down, contains documents that prove this land belongs to the community. Not to Mercer, not to anyone who can buy it. You're talking about the Ironwood Charter. Both men looked at her in surprise. She shrugged. My father was Deputy Martin Rust. He died in 1994. Truck went off a bridge in broad daylight on a clear road. Never made sense. Understanding dawned on Garrett's face. You think, I think my father knew too much about what happened in 1947. I think he was going to testify about it, and I think someone made sure he never got the chance. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her jacket, old, creased, handled too many times. He left me this, found it in his safety deposit box after he died. Garrett took it, unfolded it carefully. A letter, handwritten. Cassidy, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. The Mercers finally caught up. Don't try to fight them alone. Wait for the right person. Someone who can't be bought, can't be scared. Someone who understands that honor matters more than money. When that person comes, give them this. The truth is 17 feet down, where the bell rang for those who couldn't speak. Your father, Martin Rust. Garrett read it twice, handed it back. When did you find this? 1995. I was 16. Didn't understand it then. Joined the Army instead. Did 2 tours. Came back. Became a deputy. Worked my way up and waited. She looked at him directly. I think I've been waiting for you, Garrett Vance. Wait, no. Before he could respond, she pulled out another document. This one official, sealed with the county stamp. This is a 48-hour prosecution order. As of now, this property is under investigation for historical preservation. No one can touch it, demolish it, or claim it until my investigation is complete. Can you do that? I just did. Won't hold forever. Mercer's lawyers will challenge it by end of business today. But it gives you time. Time for what? To dive, to find the charter, to bring up proof that can stand in court. She looked out at the lake. My father died for this. Boone's brother died for this. A lot of good people have died protecting a secret that should never have been secret. Maybe it's time the truth came up for air. Garrett followed her gaze to the frozen expanse of Ironwood Lake, 17 feet, in water that could kill in minutes. He'd done harder dives, deeper, more dangerous, but never one that mattered this much. I'll need help, he said. Someone topside, in case things go wrong. I'll be here, Cassidy said. Kodiak barked once, sharp, emphatic. Garrett looked down at the dog. And you, I suppose. The dog's tail wagged slightly. Agreement. When? Cassidy asked. Garrett checked his watch. 10 in the morning. Sun would be high by noon. Best light for underwater visibility. 2 hours. I need to check the gear. Plan the dive. Make sure I'm not walking into a death trap. Smart. She handed him a card. My number. Call if Mercer comes back. Call if anything feels wrong. What defines wrong? In this town, breathing. She left. The cruiser backed away, turned headed toward the main road. Garrett stood on the porch watching her go. Behind him, Boone coughed. She's right, you know, about the danger. I know. You don't have to do this. You could drive away right now. No one would blame you. Garrett thought about that, about the easy road, the safe choice. Then he thought about Lieutenant Jenkins, about the tunnel in Kandahar, about the moment when Garrett had hesitated and a good man died. I'm done running, he said quietly. He went upstairs, found the storage room. The dry suit was there exactly as Boone had said. Black neoprene. Seals intact. Slight smell of mildew, but nothing that would compromise integrity. Tanks were old, pre-2000, but the pressure gauges showed full. The regulators needed cleaning, but would work. He found weight belts, fins, a dive mask that had seen better days but would seal. And there in a wooden box lined with felt, he found something that made his breath catch. A compass, military issue. Engraved on the back, Corporal, James Vance, USMC, 1947. Garrett picked it up with shaking hands. His great uncle, the man his family never talked about. The hero who died saving strangers and was forgotten by everyone except the strangers he saved. He opened the compass. The needle swung true, still working after 77 years. On the inside of the lid, someone had scratched words, faint, almost invisible. Truth north. Always. Garrett closed his eyes, felt the weight of the compass in his palm, the weight of history, of blood, of promises made by dead men to the living. I'll find it, he whispered. I promise. Downstairs, he laid out the gear, checked every seal, every connection, every backup system. Kodiak watched from his position near Boone. The dog's eyes never left Garrett, worried, protective. He doesn't like this, Boone observed. Neither do I, but it needs doing. The chamber is marked. Look for 3 stones stacked on the lake bed. They'll form an arrow pointing to the entrance. Small opening. You'll have to squeeze through, but once inside, there's room and air. My father built it that way. Knew someone might need to hide there someday. How do I open it? Boone held up the brass key. The one with 17 engraved on it. This fits a lock on the inside. Turn it counterclockwise. The seal will break. Everything you need is inside, wrapped in waterproof cases. Should still be good. Should. It's been underwater for 77 years, son. I'm not making guarantees. Fair enough. Garrett suited up. The neoprene was tight but flexible. He checked the regulator one more time, breathed from it, air flowed clean. He looked at Boone. If I don't come back, you'll come back. But if I don't, Cassidy knows where the drive is. She'll make sure the truth gets out. You'll come back, Boone repeated. Because you're not just diving for me, you're diving for him. He pointed to the compass, now clipped to Garrett's belt. James Vance died saving 3 children from this lake. One of them was my mother. Without him, I don't exist. Without him, you don't exist. This is blood calling to blood, Garrett. And blood always answers. Garrett pulled on the hood, the fins, checked his watch. Noon exactly. The sun was high, turning the lake into a mirror. He walked to the edge. Kodiak followed, whining softly. Garrett knelt, looked the dog in the eyes. Stay with Boone. Guard. Understand, Kodiak whined again. Unhappy, but obedient. Good boy. Garrett stood at the lake's edge. The ice was thick, 18 inches at least. He'd have to cut through. He found an old ice auger in the shed, hand-cranked, rusty but functional. He positioned himself where Boone said the markers would be. Started drilling. The auger bit into ice. Shavings flew. The sound echoed across the empty lake like a scream. 10 minutes later, he broke through. Black water welled up, freezing cold. Garrett widened the hole until it was large enough for a man in full gear. His breath came in clouds, his fingers already going numb. He sat on the ice, put on the fins, the tank, checked the pressure one last time. 3,000 psi, enough for 40 minutes at depth. He looked back at the tavern. Kodiak stood in the window paws on the sill, watching. Garrett raised his hand, a small wave. The dog barked once, not a warning, a goodbye. Then Garrett turned, positioned himself at the hole, and dropped into darkness. The cold hit like a physical blow. Even through the dry suit, he felt it trying to reach his core, trying to stop his heart. He forced himself to breathe slowly, evenly, controlled. The regulator tasted of rubber and compressed air. His exhaled breath rose in silver bubbles, disappearing toward the light above. He descended. 5 feet, 10, 15. The world turned blue-black. Sunlight filtering through ice became diffuse. Ghostly, the bottom appeared in patches. Rocks, mud, dead vegetation. 17 feet. His depth gauge confirmed it. He hovered, scanning the lake bed. There, 3 stones, stacked in a pyramid, pointing toward a rock formation 15 feet to the east. Garrett swam toward it. His fins kicked up silt. Visibility dropped to inches. He waited, breathed, let the silt settle. The formation revealed itself. Not natural, too regular, too purposeful. Someone had built this, arranged these stones into a chamber barely visible from above. And there at the base an opening, small, maybe 2 feet across. Garrett would have to remove his tank to fit through. He hesitated. Every instinct screamed against it. Never separate from your air in deep water, never. But he had no choice. He unclipped the tank, held it in front of him, pushed it through the opening, first regulator in his mouth, breathing as he squeezed his body through rock. His shoulders scraped. The dry suit caught on stone. For one terrible moment, he was stuck, unable to move forward, unable to pull back. Panic rose. Ancient, primal. He forced it down, exhaled completely, made himself smaller, and pushed through. He was inside. The chamber opened up, 6 feet across, maybe 7 feet high, and at the top an air pocket. Garrett could see it, a dome of trapped atmosphere that had been here since 1947. He surfaced into it, pulled the regulator from his mouth, breathed. The air was stale, thin, but breathable. He hung there in the water, shining his waterproof flashlight around the chamber. The walls were carved with symbols, names, dates. The 12 founding members of the Ironwood Emergency Society had been here, left their marks. And there on a stone shelf above the waterline, he saw it, a bronze bell, smaller than the one in the photograph, but identical in design, patterns carved into metal, words along the rim, for those who cannot speak. And below the bell, a metal box, sealed, locked. The keyhole glinted in his flashlight beam. Garrett pulled the brass key from his belt. His hands shook from cold and adrenaline. He fitted the key to the lock. Turned. It resisted. 77 years of corrosion fighting him. He turned harder. Something gave. A grinding sound, metal on metal. The lock opened. Garrett lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in multiple layers of oilcloth and sealed plastic, was a leather portfolio, remarkably preserved. He opened it carefully. Documents, dozens of them, all dated 1947. The Ironwood Charter, signed by 12 men, witnessed by the county judge, establishing this land as community trust. Forever, a list of names. 29 people who died in February 1947 when the ice broke and the timber dam failed. And at the bottom of the stack, something that made Garrett's blood run cold. A handwritten confession. I, Elias Mercer, do hereby confess that I ordered the upstream clear cut of timber in January 1947, knowing it would destabilize the dam. When the dam failed and 29 souls perished, I chose profit over truth. I buried the evidence. I paid the officials. I destroyed the men who tried to expose me. This is my sin. May God and these waters judge me accordingly. Written this day, March 3rd, 1952. Signed, dated, witnessed. Garrett stared at the words. This wasn't just evidence. This was a smoking gun. Proof that the Mercer family had built their empire on mass murder and cover-up. This was the truth Boone's father had died protecting. The truth Boone's brother had burned for. The truth Cassidy's father had driven off a bridge trying to preserve. And now it was Garrett's to bring into the light. He sealed the portfolio in his waterproof bag, secured it to his belt, started to turn back toward the exit. That's when he saw movement, a dark shape entering the chamber. Too large to be fish, too purposeful. Another diver. Garrett's flashlight caught a glimpse of black wetsuit, dive mask, and in the diver's hands something that reflected light. A knife. The attacker came fast, no hesitation, no warning. The blade slashed through water aimed at Garrett's air hose. Garrett twisted, years of combat training taking over. The knife missed by inches. Bubbles exploded as the attacker's momentum carried him past. Garrett grabbed the man's tank, used it as leverage, spun him around. They grappled in the confined space. Silent, deadly, two men fighting for life in 17 feet of freezing water. The attacker was strong, trained, he knew how to fight underwater. But Garrett had been fighting longer, in worse conditions, against enemies who didn't just want to kill him, who wanted to make it hurt. He got behind the attacker, arm around the throat, not to kill, to control. The man struggled. Garrett held on, counted seconds, waiting for submission. Instead, the attacker did something desperate. He pulled his own regulator out, stopped breathing. Suicide move, unless he had a backup plan. Garrett saw it too late. The attacker's hand going to his belt, pulling something, a second regulator, pony bottle, emergency air. The man brought it to his mouth, breathed, and in that moment of distraction, drove his elbow back into Garrett's ribs. The impact knocked Garrett's grip loose. The attacker spun, knife coming around in a wide arc. Garrett raised his arm to block. The blade cut through the dry suit, through neoprene, into flesh. Pain exploded, hot and immediate even in the freezing water. Blood clouded the water between them. Dark, spreading. The attacker saw it, pressed the advantage, came again. But Garrett was done playing defense. He caught the knife hand, twisted hard, felt bones grind. The knife tumbled away into darkness. Then he hit the man, once, twice. Hard shots to the face. The dive mask cracked. Water rushed in. The attacker panicked. Instinct overriding training. His hands went to his face, trying to clear the mask, trying to see. Garrett didn't give him time. He grabbed the man's belt, dragged him toward the exit. Through the narrow gap, out into the open water, he kicked toward the surface, hauling the attacker with him, his wounded arm screaming, his air running low. They broke the surface together. Garrett threw the attacker onto the ice. The man gasped, coughed, vomited lake water. Garrett pulled himself up, pain lancing through his arm, blood dripping onto white ice in bright red drops. The attacker lay there. Exhausted, defeated, Garrett reached for the man's hood, pulled it back. A face he didn't recognize. 40 maybe. Weathered, scared. Who sent you? Garrett demanded. The man coughed. Mercer. Said just scare you. Get the documents. Not kill, I swear, just scare. You brought a knife. For cutting, not for you. Garrett didn't believe him, but it didn't matter now. A sheriff's cruiser was already pulling up. Cassidy must have heard the struggle, seen the blood on ice. She was out of the car in seconds, gun drawn, professional. On the ground, hands where I can see them. The attacker complied. Too tired to fight, too scared to run, Cassidy cuffed him. Rid him his rights, the familiar words carrying across the frozen lake. Then she looked at Garrett, at the blood, at the waterproof bag on his belt. Did you get it? Garrett nodded, too exhausted to speak. Then let's get you patched up, and then we're going to end this. She helped him to the cruiser. Kodiak was already there. The dog must have run from the tavern. He pressed against Garrett's legs, whining, worried. I'm okay, buddy, Garrett managed. We got it. We got the truth. As Cassidy drove them back to the tavern, Garrett looked at the waterproof bag, at the documents inside that would change everything. 77 years, 29 dead, 3 generations of secrets. And now finally the truth was coming home. Boone was going to see justice before he died. Cassidy's father would be vindicated. And maybe, just maybe, Garrett Vance would finally be able to sleep without seeing Jenkins's face. The tavern appeared through the trees, warm, solid, waiting. Behind them the lake groaned, ice shifting in the afternoon sun. But this time it didn't sound like warning. It sounded like relief. The tavern felt different when they returned, warmer somehow. Like it knew what Garrett had brought back from the depths. Like the building itself could finally breathe after holding its breath for 77 years. Cassidy helped Garrett inside. His arm was bandaged now, field dressing from her cruiser's first aid kit. The cut wasn't deep, wouldn't need stitches, but it hurt like hell and bled like he'd been shot. Boone sat exactly where they'd left him, but his eyes were different, sharper, more alive. You found it, he said, not a question. A statement of fact. Garrett set the waterproof bag on the bar, opened it carefully, drew out the leather portfolio. The old man's hands trembled as he took it. He opened the cover, saw his father's handwriting, the charter, the confession, the list of names. Tears ran down his weathered face. Silent, unstoppable. 77 years, he whispered. My whole life I protected this secret, and you found it in an afternoon. Your father made it easy. He wanted it found. Just not by the wrong people. Boone looked up. What happened down there? Someone tried to stop me. Didn't work out for him. Jax Hollis, Cassidy said, former construction worker for Mercer Development. Got laid off 6 months ago. Been struggling with gambling debts ever since. Let me guess, Garrett said. Thornton offered to clear his debts if he retrieved the documents. That's what he's saying. Claims he was only supposed to scare you. Take the bag, not hurt anyone. He brought a knife. Yeah, well, his lawyer's going to have fun with that. Garrett walked to the window, watched the lake. The hole he'd cut was already starting to freeze over. By tomorrow, it would be like he'd never been there. Like nothing had ever disturbed that perfect sheet of ice. But everything had changed. When's the hearing, he asked. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. County Courthouse. Mercer's lawyers filed for emergency seizure of the property. Claims Boone defaulted on tax payments going back 3 years. Did he? Probably, Boone admitted. I'm 78 years old, can barely see my bills anymore. Things slip through. How much? $340,000, give or take. Garrett whistled. That's a lot of property tax. It's what happens when you own 500 acres of prime lakefront. County needs revenue. Mercer needs my land. Easy math. Not anymore. Cassidy tapped the portfolio. This charter supersedes everything. The land was put in community trust in 1947, witnessed by a sitting judge, filed with the county. It never should have been taxed as private property in the first place. So the debt is void. If this holds up in court, yes, all of it, going back to 1947. Boone laughed, short, bitter. My father would have loved that. 77 years of taxes, gone. The phone rang, old landline mounted on the wall. Garrett hadn't even realized it worked. Cassidy picked up. Iron Bell Tavern. She listened, her face hardened. I'll pass that along. She hung up. Thornton Mercer wants to talk, says he has a business proposal. I bet he does, Garrett said. You want me to tell him to go to hell? No, tell him to come by. 8 a.m. tomorrow, before the hearing. Cassidy raised an eyebrow. You sure? I want him to see what we found. Want him to know exactly what his family did, before a judge says it in public. Might be dangerous. He's desperate now. Good. Desperate men make mistakes. She made the call, relayed the message, hung up. He'll be here. Wanted to know if you'd be willing to negotiate. What did you say? I said you'd listen, didn't say you'd agree. Garrett nodded. Fair enough. The afternoon stretched into evening. Cassidy left to file paperwork, to prepare for the hearing, to make sure every I was dotted and every T-Y crossed. Garrett stayed with Boone, changed his bandages, made sure the old man ate something, built up the fire against the growing cold. Kodiak lay between them, watching, always watching. Around 6 p.m. there was a knock at the door, different from before, soft, hesitant. Garrett opened it to find an elderly woman on the porch, small, thin, white hair pinned up in a neat bun, eyes the same shade as Boone's. You must be Garrett, she said. Her voice was steady despite her age. I'm Iris, Boone's wife. She carried a basket covered with a checkered cloth, smelled like fresh bread and stew. Come in, Garrett said. He's been asking for you. Has he? She smiled. Old liar probably hasn't said a word. But when she saw Boone, her face crumpled. She set the basket down, went to him, knelt despite her age and took his hands. You stubborn old fool, she whispered. I told you not to go out in that storm. Had to check the traps. You haven't run trap lines in 20 years. Wanted to see the lake one more time, before it all ended. She kissed his forehead. It's not ending. It's just beginning. She turned to Garrett. Thank you for pulling him out, for staying, for finishing what his father started. I didn't do it alone. No, you had help. She looked at Kodiak. The dog's tail wagged slightly. Good dog, smart dog. She stood, opened the basket. You both need to eat. Can't fight battles on empty stomachs. The stew was venison, rich, hot. The bread was homemade. Stew warnamam. They ate in comfortable silence. 3 people in a dong. Unlikely allies in a war most of the world had forgotten. There's something I need to show you, Iris said after the meal. She pulled a VHS tape from her bag. Found this in our attic last month. Been meaning to digitize it. Never got around to it. She looked at the old TV in the corner. That still work. VCR's underneath, Boone said. Remote's in the drawer. Garrett set it up. The tape was old. The label faded. But he could just make out the date, January 15th, 1947. The screen flickered, jumped, then resolved into black and white footage. The tavern, newer, fresh paint. A crowd gathered outside, men in heavy coats, women in wool dresses, children running between legs. And there in the center, the bell, massive, bronze, hanging from a wooden frame that stood 20 feet tall. A man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, same jaw as Boone. This had to be his father, Robert Aldridge. The film had no sound, but someone had added subtitles later. Probably Iris trying to preserve the memory. Robert's mouth moved. The subtitles appeared. We gather here today to dedicate this bell to the 29 souls lost to Ironwood Lake in February of this year. We could not save them, but we can honor them, and we can make sure no one else dies waiting for help that never comes. He gestured to the other 11 men, the founding members. This bell will ring for those who cannot speak, for those the storm takes, for those the ice claims, for those whose voices are silenced by cold and water and fear. As long as this bell stands, no one drowns alone. The crowd applauded silently on screen. Then another man stepped forward, younger, military uniform, Marine Corps. Garrett's breath caught. That's him, Iris said softly. That's James Vance, your great uncle. The subtitles continued, I am Corporal James Vance. I pulled 3 children from this lake last week. Would have pulled more, but I was too late, too slow. The bell changes that, the bell gives us time, and time is the difference between life and death. He placed his hand on the bronze. This bell will ring for those who cannot speak, and we will answer, every time. No matter the cost, the film jumped, skipped ahead. Now it showed the bell being lowered. Ropes, pulleys, men straining against weight, down into the ice. Through a hole cut with saws and axes. Down into the black water. The subtitles appeared again. Relay point 17. The last bell. The deepest, the one that guards the truth. The image faded to white. Then nothing. Garrett sat back, his throat tight. He knew, he said. James Vance knew they'd try to destroy it. That's why he helped hide it underwater. He died 3 days after that film was made, Iris said. Went back into the lake to retrieve a fisherman's body. Ice broke, he went under. Never came back up. She looked at Garrett. But you did. You came back up with the truth he died protecting. I'd say that makes you family. Garrett didn't trust his voice to respond. Boone reached over, patted his shoulder. Welcome to the Aldrich clan. We're small, stubborn, and apparently we don't know when to quit. Sounds familiar, Garrett managed. They talked through the evening, stories of the old days, the rescues, the close calls, the families saved and the ones lost. Around 10 p.m. Iris left, kissed Boone goodbye, hugged Garrett like he was her own son. Tomorrow, she said, the truth comes out, and the dead can finally rest. After she was gone, Boone looked at Garrett seriously. You should know something. Thornton Mercer isn't evil. Not like his grandfather, he's just blind, raised on lies, taught that his family built an empire through hard work and vision. He's about to learn different. Yes, and that's going to destroy him. The man he thought he was, the legacy he believed in, all of it, gone. You feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for any man who discovers his whole life was built on a mass grave. Garrett thought about that, about the weight of inherited sins, about discovering that everything you believed was a lie. He'll survive, Garrett said. Men like him always do. Maybe, but the man who survives won't be the same one who walks in tomorrow. They settled in for what little remained of the night. Garrett dozed fitfully. Every sound made him alert. Every creak made his hand reach for a weapon that wasn't there. Around midnight, his phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. Final offer, $500,000. Cash, be gone by dawn, or burn like Thomas Aldridge. Garrett showed it to Boone. The old man's face went pale. They know about the fire. They're admitting. They're desperate, making threats they can't take back. Another buzz. Doc, 11 p.m. tomorrow night. Come alone. Or the tavern burns. Garrett looked at Kodiak. The dog's ears were up. Alert. You thinking what I'm thinking? Garrett asked the dog. Kodiak tilted his head. Yeah, me too. Time to set a trap. He called Cassidy, told her about the messages, about the threat. Don't go, she said immediately. It's too dangerous. They'll kill you. Maybe, or maybe they'll confess on camera. Silence. What are you planning? A live stream, Facebook, public. Let the whole county watch what happens when you corner a Mercer. That's insane. Probably, but it's also the only way to end this. For good. No lawyers, no appeals, just truth. Public, undeniable. She was quiet for a long moment. I'll have deputies hidden in the trees, armed. If things go sideways, make sure someone knows where to find Kodiak. He deserves better than this. The dog whined, like he understood. Don't talk like that, Cassidy said. You're coming back. We both are. From your mouth to God's ears. He hung up, looked at Boone. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. For all of us. Morning came too fast and too bright. Sunlight turned the lake into hammered gold. Beautiful. Merciless. At 8 a.m. exactly, the Escalade pulled up. Thornton Mercer stepped out. Alone this time. No lawyers, no bodyguards. He looked tired, older than yesterday, like he'd spent the night not sleeping, not eating, just thinking about what he'd lost. Garrett opened the door before he could knock. Mr. Mercer. Mr. Vance. Thornton's voice was hoarse. May I come in? Garrett stepped aside. Thornton entered, saw Boone, saw the portfolio on the table. His eyes went to it like a magnet. So it's true, you found it. All of it, Garrett said. The charter, the confession, the list of names. Thornton walked to the table, stood over the documents. Didn't touch them. May I? Garrett nodded. Thornton opened the portfolio, read the charter. His face remained neutral, professional. Then he reached the confession. His hand started shaking. He read it once, twice, a third time. This can't be real, he whispered. It's real. Your grandfather wrote it, signed it, admitted everything. But he was a hero, a builder. He created jobs, built this county. On the bodies of 29 people he killed, on the ashes of the men he destroyed trying to cover it up. Thornton sank into a chair. The portfolio fell from his hands. I didn't know, he said. I swear to God, I didn't know. I believe you, Garrett said, and meant it. But you know now. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Thornton looked up. His eyes were red. What do you want money? I can write you a check right now. 5 million, 10, whatever it takes. I don't want your money. Then what? I want you to stand up in that courtroom today in front of everyone and tell the truth about your grandfather, about the murders, about the 77 years your family spent burying evidence. That will destroy me, my company, My reputation. Everything I've built. Yes, Garrett said simply. It will. Thornton stood, walked to the window, looked out at the lake his grandfather had turned into a graveyard. And if I don't, then I will. And it'll be worse because it'll look like you knew, like you were part of the cover-up. Silence. There's a third option, Thornton said quietly. What's that? He turned. His face was different now, harder. The businessman returning. I can make this all go away. The documents, the confession, you, all of it. I have resources you can't imagine. People who specialize in making problems disappear. Kodiak growled, low, dangerous. Garrett smiled, no humor in it. You can try, but you should know something. Right now, copies of every document are with Sheriff Brennan, with the county clerk, with a lawyer in Billings who will release them to every newspaper in Montana if anything happens to me or Boone. He stepped closer. Your grandfather killed 29 people and got away with it. Your father killed at least 3 more. That stops with you. Today, either you tell the truth, or I do, but one way or another the truth comes out. Thornton stared at him, measuring, calculating. Then something broke behind his eyes, the last defense crumbling. All right, he said quietly. All right, I'll tell him. Everything. He walked to the door, paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your great-uncle, about all of it. Then he was gone. The Escalade disappeared down the road. Boone exhaled shakily. Do you think he meant it? Doesn't matter, we have insurance. But Garrett felt uneasy. Something about the way Thornton had surrendered. Too easy, too clean. Tonight, Garrett said, the dock, 11 p.m. That's where we'll know for sure. The day crawled by. Garrett checked his gear, his phone, made sure the live stream would work, made sure Cassidy knew the plan. Boone rested. Iris came by with lunch, stayed to hold her husband's hand. Kodiak paced, restless, sensing the tension building. At 10 p.m. Garrett stood. Time to go. Stay here, he told Boone. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Cassidy. Be careful. Always am. He walked to the dock. The night was clear, cold, stars bright enough to read by. His phone was in his jacket pocket, screen facing out, camera lens exposed through a small hole he'd cut in the fabric. Facebook live streaming to Cassidy's official sheriff department page. Already 300 people were watching. The number climbed as word spread. Kodiak was hidden in the tree line. Cassidy had wanted him closer. Garrett had refused. If things went bad, the dog would charge in. Better to keep him at distance. Safe. At exactly 11 p.m. headlights appeared. The Escalade. Thornton stepped out. Same wool coat, same polished shoes, but different posture. Defeated, desperate. He walked onto the dock, stopped 10 feet from Garrett. You came. I said I would. Thornton held up a metal briefcase. 500,000, cash, untraceable. Take it. Disappear. Let my family keep our dignity. Garrett didn't move. Your family's dignity died with 29 people in 1947. That wasn't me. I didn't know. You know now. That's what matters. Thornton's face hardened. You self-righteous son of a... He caught himself, breathed. You think you're better than me. You think your hands are clean. No, but I'm not trying to bury bodies anymore. I'm trying to dig them up. Why? What does it get you? Those people are dead. They don't care. Their families care. The truth cares, Thornton laughed. Bitter. Broken. The truth. You want to know the truth. My grandfather was a monster. My father was a coward. And I'm the fool who believed their lies. He stepped closer. I've spent my whole life building on sand. Every deal, every development, every dollar. All of it resting on a foundation of corpses. You think I can just walk away from that? You think I can just admit it? Destroy everything? Yes, Garrett said simply. Because it was never yours to begin with. Thornton pulled something from his coat. For a heart-stopping moment, Garrett thought it was a gun. It was a lighter. You brought the documents tonight, didn't you? The originals? You thought you'd get me to confess on camera. He gestured to Garrett's pocket. The phone. I know about the live stream. I have people monitoring social media. Right now, 2,800 people are watching this. Probably more by the time I finish talking. Garrett's pulse jumped. Thornton knew, had known from the start. So here's what's going to happen, Thornton continued. I'm going to burn the briefcase. The money. Right here. Right now. Symbolic gesture. He opened the case. Stacks of hundreds. Real. Legitimate. And then I'm going to tell those 2,800 people exactly what my grandfather did, what my father covered up, what I've spent $70 million trying to bury. He flicked the lighter, touched it to the bills. They caught. Flames spread. Thornton held the burning briefcase over the water. Let it fall. The fire died in the lake with a hiss. Then he looked directly at the camera. My name is Thornton Mercer, and my family built an empire on murder. His voice cracked. In February 1947, my grandfather ordered an illegal clear-cut upstream from Ironwood Lake. He knew the dam would fail. He knew people would die. And when they did, 29 souls, including 3 children, he buried the evidence. He pulled out a folded paper, the confession, the original. This is his admission, written in 1952, hidden for 77 years. I could destroy it right now, but I won't. He handed it to Garrett, because some sins can't be burned away. They can only be confessed and paid for. Tears ran down his face. To the families of the 29, I'm sorry. My family stole your justice, your closure, your truth. I can't give back the years, but I can give you this. Acknowledgement, public, permanent. Your loved ones mattered. Their deaths mattered. And the man who killed them will be remembered not as a founder, but as a murderer. Silence on the dock, just wind and water. That's all I have to say. He turned, walked back to his Escalade, got in, drove away. Garrett stood alone, the phone in his pocket still streaming, the viewer count climbing past 4,000. He looked at the camera. You heard him. Truth is out. Finally, he ended the stream. Cassidy emerged from the trees, Kodiak at her side. Got all of it, she said. Recorded, witnessed, official. Garrett nodded, couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. Kodiak pressed against his leg, warm, solid, real. It's over, Cassidy said softly. Really over. And this time Garrett believed her. The courthouse was packed. The next morning, every seat filled, people standing against the walls, news cameras in the back. The live stream had gone viral overnight, 4 million views, shared across every platform. The confession that ended a dynasty. Garrett sat in the front row, Kodiak at his feet. The dog wore a service vest. Official. No one questioned his presence. Cassidy stood near the prosecutor's table, badge polished, uniform crisp, her father's letter folded in her pocket. The judge entered. Miriam Stone, 70 years old, silver hair, eyes that had seen every trick in the book and invented a few of her own. All rise. Everyone stood. Be seated. We're here today regarding the property dispute over Iron Bell Tavern and associated land. Mr. Mercer, you petitioned for emergency seizure based on tax default. Mr. Aldridge claims historical exemption. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, both lawyers said. But Thornton Mercer stood before his lawyer could continue. Your Honor, I'd like to withdraw all claims, effective immediately. The courtroom erupted. Order. Judge Stone's gavel cracked like gunfire. Silence fell. Mr. Mercer, do you understand what you're doing? Yes. Your Honor, I'm admitting that my family never had legitimate claim to this land. The Ironwood Charter of 1947 establishes it as community trust, forever. I'm withdrawing all claims, all liens, all demands. He looked at Garrett, and I'm offering $12 million in restitution to the families of the 29 victims. It won't bring them back, but it's acknowledgement that their lives mattered. Judge Stone studied him for a long moment. Very well. Based on the evidence presented and Mr. Mercer's statement, I find that Iron Bell Tavern and associated lands are held in perpetual community trust as established by the Ironwood Charter of 1947. All claims are dismissed. Her gavel fell. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into the 1947 deaths and referring this matter to the State Attorney General. She looked at Thornton. Mr. Mercer, you may want to retain counsel. Yes, Your Honor. The gavel fell again. This court is adjourned. People rushed forward to shake Garrett's hand, to hug Boone, to take pictures of the documents that had ended an empire. Outside reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. The story was everywhere. But Garrett didn't care about that. He only cared that Boone was smiling. Really smiling. For the first time since they'd met. The days after moved like a river breaking through a dam. News coverage, interviews, investigators combing through 77 years of records. Thornton Mercer resigned from his company, gave his shares to a trust for victim families, moved to Seattle, disappeared from public life. The Ironwood Emergency Society was formally recognized, historical landmark status, protected forever. And Boone Aldridge, at 78 years old, finally slept through the night without nightmares. 3 weeks later, Garrett stood on the renovated porch of Iron Bell Tavern. The sign above his head was new, hand-carved, professional. Iron Bell Tavern and Veterans. K9 Center established 1947, restored 2024. Inside, 4 veterans worked with 4 German shepherds. Learning search and rescue. Learning to trust again. Learning that service didn't end when the uniform came off. Kodiak supervised from the corner, a badge pinned to his vest. Chief instructor, honorary title. But he wore it with dignity. Iris brought lunch every day. Boone held court near the fire, telling stories, teaching history, making sure the past wasn't forgotten. Cassidy stopped by when her shifts allowed, brought updates, smiled more than she used to. Garrett walked to the dock, the same place Thornton had confessed, the same place James Vance had died in 1947. He pulled the brass compass from his pocket. Truth north, always. The setting sun turned the lake to liquid fire. Behind him he heard voices, laughter, the sound of dogs barking in play. The sound of life returning to a place death had haunted too long. "You did good, James," Garrett whispered to the water. "You can rest now." Kodiak appeared at his side, pressed against his leg. Garrett reached down, scratched behind the dog's ears. "What do you say, buddy, ready to go inside?" Kodiak looked up at him, those amber eyes steady, calm. Then the dog did something he'd never done before. He didn't tap his paw 3 times. He didn't alert to danger. He just wagged his tail, slow, content. For the first time since Kandahar, since the tunnels, since the nightmares started, Garrett felt it. Peace, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose, of belonging, of home. They walked back to the tavern together. Man and dog, guardian and protector. Inside, Boone was telling a story, something about the winter of 1952. The veterans were laughing, the dogs were listening. Garrett settled into a chair. Kodiak curled at his feet. On the wall, the photograph of the 12 founding members hung in a place of honor. James Vance staring out across the decades, his hand on the bronze bell. "This bell will ring for those who cannot speak." It had rung, the truth had spoken. And finally, after 77 years of silence, the dead could rest. Outside, the sun sank below the mountains. Stars emerged, clear, bright, eternal. And on Ironwood Lake, 29 lanterns floated on the current, one for each soul lost, one for each name remembered. The bell in the restored tower tolled, once for each life, 29 times. The sound carried across the water, through the trees into the mountains, a promise kept, a debt paid, a truth that would ring eternal. Garrett closed his eyes, listened to the bell, to the voices, to the sound of healing happening in real time. Kodiak's breathing slowed, steady, even. The dog was asleep. For the first time in 3 years, Garrett felt ready to join him. No nightmares tonight, no tunnels, no explosions, no faces of the dead. Tonight there would only be peace, and the quiet knowledge that some things were worth fighting for, some truths were worth dying for, and some promises were worth keeping, even if it took 77 years.